In 1978, Ron Guidry completed the greatest pitching season in pinstripes ever. He was the unanimous AL Cy Young recipient, and he led the Yankees to their second straight World Series win. If an important pitching stat exists, he probably still owns the Yankees single-season record for it. This wasn't just a dominant season by Yankee standards. His ERA was the 6th lowest ever by a post-integration starter to that point, while his ERA plus of 208 was the second highest, only to 68 Bob Gibson. He was keeping good company for sure, but there's one record that he could have all to himself: the winning percentage record. Okay, yeah, we don't care about wins and losses here in 2025, and nor should we when we're talking solely about the ability of a pitcher, but just give me a second, it does mean something. In 1978, Ron Guidry went 25-3, which equates to a winning percentage of 89.3. He's the only player in MLB history to start 35 or more games in a season and be assigned 3 or less losses. It was one of the most successful seasons of all time. All of the boxes are checked. But if we begin to look a little deeper at these 3 losses that kept Ron from a perfect season, something starts to stand out. There's a connection between these 3 losses that, while on the surface is pretty ridiculous and seems inconsequential, the outcome is undeniable. Let's check out our handy-dandy 1978 Ron Guidry rulebook, Title 1, Article 1, Section 1. If you want to defeat Ron Guidry in his record-setting 1978 season, your pitcher must 1. Be left-handed, and 2. Be named Michael. Now, I don't know who ratified this into law, but the league followed it. The 3 pitchers that kept Ron from a 100% winning percentage were all left-handed pitchers named Mike. While this fact has been well documented and is destined to become a coincidental footnote in the void that is baseball history, I noticed something. I discovered that these 3 Mikes that beat Ron were not the only Mikes that he faced that year. In fact, behind the scenes of this 1978 season, there was an ongoing battle between Ronald and pitchers named Mike. Our goal today is to uncover the participants of this secret war and find out who really came out victorious. Before we can meet the Mikes, let's get to know our Ron. 27-year-old Ronald Ames Guidry entered 1978 spring training as well as any pitcher could hope to, with a raging bout of bronchitis which caused him to shed several pounds from his already wiry frame. However, he was no longer worried about losing his spot in the rotation, which was a far cry from years prior. His 77 season was capped off by 8 straight wins down the title stretch and solidified him as the #1 starter going forward. In his 3rd game that spring, Guidry tossed an immaculate inning, and after the game he set some pretty spot-on goals for the year. He also remarked that he didn't think he would be pitching every 4th day. My advice to Ron on that matter would be, keep dreaming. In the season opener against the Rangers, Guidry left the mound after a 1-1 tie. Richie Zisk would proceed to hit a walk-off homer against Goose Gossage, and this would be the last time the Yankees would take a loss with Guidry on the mound for a long time. His April was a sign of things to come. His second start was a 10-hit shutout versus the White Sox, and he probably could have gone the distance in his 4th start had he not swallowed his own tobacco spit lunging for a chopper. He would be removed after 7 scoreless innings because he didn't want to throw up on live TV. He finished April with a glistening 1.5 ERA, and his production continued to rise going into the summer. 5 starts, 5 convincing wins for the Yankees and Guidry. On May 23rd, he punched out 11 Cleveland batters, setting a career high in strikeouts in a complete game where he balked in the only opposing run. By this point, Guidry's consistent success was no longer just a local news story. The idea of a bayou-raised, 160-pound soaking wet, Cajun French-speaking pitcher bucking up and becoming the ace of the New York Yankees was just too good a story not to run with. Ron, or as his teammates called him, Gator
don't play no shit,
was picking up steam, and nobody could have predicted what Ron was about to do. In the history of baseball, there have only been 3 occurrences of a pitcher who in a 4-game span strikes out 50 or more batters while maintaining a sub-.51 ERA. 1997 Randy Johnson, 2021 Jacob deGrom, and 1978 Ronald Guidry. In his first 4 games of June, Gator recorded 98% of his team's possible outs, throwing 3 complete games while allowing 2 total runs. The 4th game of this stretch occurred on June 17th, when Ron Guidry struck out 18 California Angels at Yankee Stadium, blowing past the Yankees' previous record of 15, and the record still stands today. It was a 137-pitch shutout. It was during this game that Yankees commentator Phil Rizzuto noticed a fan sign in the crowd and, speaking on air, gave Ron Guidry a new nickname.
What an exhibition by the Louisiana Lightning Man!
He did give up 6 combined earned runs in his next 2 starts, but the Yankees' stacked offense was still enough to avoid that dreadful first L of the season. It's late June, and he's 12-0. In a case of almost patricidal coincidence, the Yankees' record for the most consecutive wins to start a season is 12, and it was set in 1939 by a man named Atlee Donald. Atlee Donald was a Louisiana native who pitched in the 30s and 40s for the Yankees, and eventually became the head scout for the team. It was Donald that was instrumental in signing Ronald in 1971, and now in 78, Ron Guidry was about to break Atlee's almost 40-year-old record. Life's a bitch. In his 17th start of the season, Ron would defeat the Tigers and would record his 13th consecutive game without a loss, breaking Atlee's record. So yeah, all of the past 3.5-ish minutes was to say that from April 8th to July 2nd, Ron Guidry was like butter. He was on a roll. However, he was about to meet his first. The name Michael is kind of a Swiss Army knife, especially in the world of sports. The most decorated Olympian of all time is a Mike. Arguably the most popular athlete of all time is a Mike. The best-selling artist of all time is a Mike as well. Whether it's painting the Sistine Chapel or wasting an Inner Circle Hall of Fame career with a team with a lousy owner, Mikes are often found at the top of their craft. And this is exactly where we find the first of our Mikes. Mike Caldwell was steaming hot, and he had a reason to hate the Yankees this year. Mike had bounced around the NL in the early 70s before landing with the Brewers in 77. Mike was seriously breaking out in 78, tossing 10 complete games in 16 starts, including a shutout of the Yankees in late June. And he would actually end up with more complete games than Guidry that year, leading the majors with 23. 23 complete games is ridiculous by any metric or any era. The All-Star ballots arrived on July 4th, and along with blistering outfielder Larry Heisel, Mike Caldwell would not be selected as an American League All-Star. The blame was kind of pointed at manager of the All-Star team, the winner of the AL pennant from the year before, who just happened to be Yankees manager Billy Martin. So going into this July 7th matchup against the perfect Guidry and the Yankees, Mike and Larry had some extra motivation to dominate and break the streak. In the first inning, Heisel went yard to go up 3-0 and tagged Guidry again in the 6th to go up 5-zip. Mike tossed a smooth complete game shutout, his second in 2 weeks versus the Yankees, and the Brewers beat Guidry 6-0. Ron had met his first Mike, and he was blindsided. He expected an easy win before the All-Star game, but Mike was in the way. When it comes to the Brewers, Larry Heisel would eventually be called to join the All-Star team to replace an injured Yankee, Craig Nettles. Although this replacement was explicitly coming from the president of the league, not Billy Martin, Mike Caldwell would unfortunately still not be given the call. Going into the All-Star break, Gator had pitched 11 straight games on 4 days rest. Billy Martin had Ron face one batter, Willie Stargell, induced a flyout, and then yanked him from the All-Star game. His first game back was in Chicago, and it was bumpy, allowing 6 runs over 9 innings, but the Yankees offense was able to pull out the win in extras. He followed that one up with back-to-back shutouts. It was during this stretch that Billy Martin was removed from his post by the Yankees for the first of 5 times. After a 5th consecutive road win to keep the Yankees' pennant hopes alive, Billy Martin did what any disgruntled manager would do. He went to the airport bar, he had a few drinks, he talked to the New York Times, and then he decided to use some choice words to describe his coworker and boss. Doesn't exactly sound like a man who wants to keep his job. Before Steinbrenner could officially fire him, he tearfully resigned the next day, and the Yankees hired Hall of Famer Bob Lemon to be their new manager. Billy Martin had resigned in disgrace. And then 5 days later at the Old Timers game, Billy Martin made an appearance with the announcement that he would be coming back as manager in 1980, which is 2 years from now. There should be a beef history about the Martin-Steinbrenner relationship. There's so much meat on that bone. Back to Ron. He finally faced Mike number 2 in his first start of August. In opposition to Mike number 1, our second Mike is an AL East pitcher that Billy Martin did select to the All-Star team. This is Mike Flanagan. Flanagan was in the process of becoming the Orioles' number 2 guy behind Jim Palmer. He would actually end 1978 with more starts than Guidry, leading the American League with 40. Going into this August 4th battle between Ron and Mike, Ron came prepared. He knew that the Mike coalition would be out for blood. The Yankees struck first in the 3rd when a Flanagan wild pitch allowed a Willie Randolph sacrifice, and it looked like Guidry would take a 1-0 lead all the way. Then a Bucky Dent error allowed Eddie Murray to reach base in the 7th, and the next batter, Doug DeCinces, sent one into the left field bleachers in Yankee Stadium. Ron Guidry threw a complete game in the loss, and for the first time this season, the potent Yankees offense was not able to provide the needed run support for Guidry. Flanagan tossed 7 before handing the ball off to closer Don Stanhouse, who looks exactly like what you think a closer named Don Stanhouse would look like. The Mikes are up 2-0. At this point, Ron could sense that he just needed a little more. The power of the Mikes had taken him with the element of surprise the first time, and the second time, you can chalk it up to baseball being baseball. Usually Usually a 2-run complete game is enough with Reggie Jackson on your team. The third time, Ron would be ready. In his next start on the 10th versus the still vengeful Brewers, he took a no-hitter into the 6th en route to a 3-hit shutout. And then on the 15th, he threw a 4-hitter in Oakland. If your name was Michael, you were just not winning against Ron Guidry. That's just what it came down to. After a no decision in Seattle and a win versus Oakland, Ron found himself in Baltimore facing a familiar foe. It's Mike Flanagan again. Neither Mike nor Ron were at their best. Ron gave up another 2-run homer to Doug DeCinces and was forced to leave after 7 when the bat slipped from Ken Singleton's hand after a strikeout and hit Guidry in the ankle. Now, I don't have video for this, but it was either the nastiest slider ever or Ken had beef, because how do you manage to throw the bat forward at the pitcher after you strike out? I don't know. Mike gave up 4 runs on 11 hits in just 5 innings until being relieved by Tippy Martinez, who allowed a 5th run and was assigned the loss. Not only were the Yankees back within 7 games from rival Boston for the AL East crown, Ron has won his first battle with the Mikes. They do bleed. It's 2-1. To start off September, Ron would rattle off 3 straight complete games, allowing a single run in the first game versus Detroit, and then reeling off back-to-back shutouts, his 4th time doing so that season. His ERA sat at 1.71, the lowest it had been since June. Then shit got weird. You have never heard of this person. If you're under 30 and you know baseball, there's a solid chance that you knew at least one of the previous Mikes. I firmly believe that if you don't know this particular story, you have never heard the name Mike Willis before in a baseball context, so let's learn about him. In 1968, 17-year-old Hillsborough native Michael Willis was drafted by the Reds, but forgoed the minors to play ball at Vanderbilt. After 4 years at Vandy, he was drafted by the Orioles, reaching AAA by 1974, but his progress stagnated behind a bloated Baltimore bullpen. Did someone say expansion draft? In November 76, Mike Willis was drafted for the 3rd time in 8 years by the brand new Toronto Blue Jays, and was set to debut with the inaugural squad. He made some spot starts, but became a reliable high-leverage lefty out of the pen in 77. Unfortunately, the next year that arm had slowed significantly. He had barely gotten his ERA below 5 entering September, and the Jays didn't really have a choice but to keep using him. It was only the team's 2nd season. They didn't need to be good yet, nor were they. On September 5th, Mike pitched innings 3 through 8 against Cleveland, and then he was given a full 2 weeks off until the Yankees came to town. While the Jays were long out of playoff contention, they knew that the Yankees were fighting for their playoff lives at the moment, and lined up a threesome of lefties in order to try to crush some dreams. Mike Willis was the first of those lefties. This is a diagram containing every appearance of Mike Willis's major league career, with the x-axis being the date and the y-axis being the amount of innings pitched. Using the eye test, most of his appearances lasted in the 1 out to 3 innings range. There's a few outliers, like when starter Jeff Bird gave up 5 runs over 2 outs, and Mike came in and tossed 7 1/3, finishing the game in a loss. He also had 2 traditional starts that went over 6 innings in his 144 major league appearances. To stomach what happens next, we need to keep in mind the words of modern-day philosopher Kevin Garnett. Anything is possible. On September 20th, in the first game of a doubleheader versus the Yankees, Mike Willis pitched the only complete game of his career. He allowed 1 run on 6 hits, and was able to strike Reggie Jackson out 3 times that day. Mike afterwards called it the greatest game of his life. And yeah, it was. Ron, on the other hand, had the worst start of his career up to that point. He was yanked after 5 outs with the Yankees down 5-0, although only 3 of those runs were earned. While the Yankees hung on to a 2-game lead for the AL East, the Mikes took an insurmountable 3-1 lead against Ronald Ames Guidry. The Bronx Bombers had 10 games left, while Guidry only had 2 prospective starts left on his docket. It didn't look possible, but the baseball gods were not about to let Ron go without a fighting chance. The next series took the Yankees to Cleveland, where Guidry was now operating on 3 days rest and starting on Sunday. Opposite him is a man named Mike Paxton. Mike Paxton was supposed to be a starter on the Red Sox this year, but a late spring training trade for Dennis Eckersley sent him and Bo Diaz out to Cleveland, who was not contending at the time. Paxton got the chance to be a starter in 78, and he was coming off a complete game win versus Baltimore going into Sunday versus Ron and the Yanks. Up 3-1, Michael Dwayne Paxton may have grown a bit cocky in this lead, and that made him weak. He got roughed up. 6 2/3 innings, but he gave up 4 runs on 11 hits. Ron was 2 Dwayne Kuiper singles away from a no-hitter, and he didn't allow Dwayne past second base. Ron knew he had to be near perfect to beat a Mike, and near perfect he was. Guidry is still down though, 3-2. Ron needed some luck, but there was a chance that he could even out the series. He's got 1 start left, and New York's final 6 games are against teams we know have mics on them. Toronto and Cleveland, again. It all depends on who Toronto's starter is on shit. Mike Willis started his 5th career game on Wednesday. Guidry started on Thursday. To add insult to injury, Mike Paxton also made an appearance on Saturday, but Ron was not pitching then either. The Yankees would win both games against the Michaels, but Ronald Guidry did not pitch against them, and remains down 3-2 as the final game of the season passes with a Sunday blowout loss to Cleveland. The regular season is over. Ron Guidry finishes the season with a record of 3-2 versus the Mikes, and an overall record of 24-3. That's a winning percentage of 87.5, which almost breaks Lefty Grove's 1931 mark for highest ever. This is what I would be saying if the American League didn't get to experience the 2 most beautiful words in Major League Baseball. See, when the Yankees lost on Sunday, they blew a lead. We're up 2 games with a week to go, but with Sunday's clobbering by Cleveland, they became tied with the Red Sox at 99-63 for the division lead. This resulted in the famed Game 163, and because the Red Sox held the season tiebreaker, the Yankees needed to get on a flight to Boston immediately to play a winner-take-all game the next day. Who would the Yankees send out to pitch? Who do you think? Seriously. As the viewer of this, who do you think they sent out? It's Ron Guidry on 3 days rest. There's literally no other choice here. The Red Sox, on the other hand, also didn't really have a choice. Michael Augustine Torres was well known to Yankee fans. A 10-year veteran, the Yankees had traded for him mid-season last year, and he was an integral part of their 1977 World Series winning team. He threw 2 complete games in the Fall Classic, including going the distance in the clinching Game 6 featuring Reggie Jackson's 3 homers. After the title, he was granted free agency and he immediately signed with the Yankees' biggest rival, the Boston Red Sox. Mike Torres became a celebrity and a workhorse in a rotation featuring Luis Tiant and the aforementioned Dennis Eckersley. He also became a soda pop advocate.
New Mellow Yellow, the world's fastest soft drink. Oh! Perry fires down. New Torres reaches back for that smooth lemony taste, and his Mellow Yellow is gone! New Mellow Yellow! No wonder they call it the
Eck and Tiant won games 161 and 62, and now it was Mike Torres' turn to seal the deal. So the stage was inexplicably set for a 6th and final pitching duel between Ron Guidry and a pitcher named Michael. And the stakes are at their almost absolute maximum. Yankees versus Red Sox, the most heated rivalry in the history of Major League Baseball, playing in Game 163, win or go home. The context for a Major League Baseball game just doesn't get much better than that. And for Ron and the Yankees, it's all against a guy named Mike, who just 12 months ago they called a teammate and a fellow world champion. Game 163 started at 2:30 p.m. local time, and the Sox struck first. 39-year-old Carl Yastrzemski took Ron to deep right field while a pre-recorded interview played over the broadcast. It would stay 1-0 until the 6th inning, when a Rick Burleson double followed by a Jerry Remy sacrifice would create an opportunity for Jim Rice. While being showered with MVP chants, which would come true, Rice would guide a Guidry slider into center field to put the Sox up 2-0. Mike Torres, on the other hand, was cruising. After walking the first batter of the game, he tossed 6 innings of 2-hit ball and took a 2-0 lead into the 7th. He retired Greg Nettles, but gave up back-to-back singles to Chris Chambliss and Roy White. Pinch hitter Jim Spencer flew out, which brought up the Yankees' defensive-minded shortstop, Bucky Dent. On the first pitch of the at-bat, Bucky swung and took a painful foul ball off his already injured ankle, and the game came to a halt for 1 minute and 26 seconds. While talking about this stoppage 30 years later, they portrayed this as much longer, closer to 3 or 4 minutes, but we have the uncut game. It was under 90 seconds. It was allegedly during this 86-second stoppage of play that on-deck hitter Mickey Rivers noticed that Bucky's bat was cracked, and the bat boy gave him a new one. On the very next pitch, Mike tried to sneak an inside fastball by Bucky, and Bucky Dent sent the ball over the green monster, putting the Yankees up by 1. Mike would gift Mickey Rivers a free base and be pulled. Rivers came around to score, giving Mike 4 earned runs on the day. Ron would face 2 batters in the bottom of the 7th and be pulled. The Sox would draw within a run by the 8th, but Goose Gossage was able to pull off an 8-out save, earning the Yankees their 100th and clinching victory in Game 163. Ron would not face another Mike in 1978, nor would he lose again. He tossed 8 innings of 1-run ball in an ALCS clinching Game 4 against the Royals, and in Game 3 of the World Series, he delivered a complete game in a 5-1 Yankees win. The Dodgers would take the Yankees to 6 games for the second year in a row, and for the second year in a row, the Yankees would win the World Series. Ron finished the season 25-3, but more importantly, he was able to draw even with the Mikes. Ron was able to overcome a 3-1 deficit to the only people who were able to beat him in 1978. This was not the season that Ron lost to 3 lefties named Mike. No, this is the season that Ron beat everyone else not named Mike, and was able to contain the fire and flames that comes with being named Michael. Mike Caldwell would go on to place second in 1978's Cy Young race behind Ron Guidry. He would famously be sucker punched the next year by Reggie Jackson. He was a stalwart on the Brewers teams of the late 70s and 80s, and went 2-0 in the 1982 World Series. Retiring after the 1984 season, Mike went on to be a pitching coach for over 20 years. It was during his time with the Arizona League Giants between 2009 and 2011 that a 10-year-old boy must have walked up to him with a baseball, and Mike Caldwell was kind enough to sign that kid's baseball. That kid would then discover the same baseball some 14-15 years later, and it would lead that same kid to a ridiculous story about how 5 Mikes banded together and battled with a guy named Ron. Thank you, Mike Caldwell, for being kind to me as a child. Mike Flanagan would go on to win the 1979 AL Cy Young, and was a mainstay of the Orioles in the 80s. He sits at 5th all-time for wins by a Baltimore Oriole. He went on to be both a broadcaster and the general manager for the O's in the mid-2000s. Thank you, and rest in peace, Mike Flanagan. Mike Willis's career did not flourish like the first 2 Mikes. Willis's complete game win versus Guidry and the Yankees would be the self-proclaimed game of his life, and his professional career winded down afterwards due to arm trouble. He retired, and was a pitching coach for a while until moving to Houston, where he resides today. Thank you, Mike Willis. Mike Paxton has a similar trajectory to Willis. He threw another couple of seasons until hanging up the cleats at age 27. Mike finished his career with exactly 30 Major League wins. He's a member of the M Club Hall of Fame at the University of Memphis, as well as a member of the Tennessee Hall of Fame. Finally, Mike Torres. Mike would pitch until he was 38, amassing 18 years at 7 different clubs, finishing with 185 total wins. He would continue to star in beverage commercials. Torres and Bucky Dent are still good friends to this day. This brings us back to our main guy, Ron. Ron's 1978 season is the greatest pitching season ever in pinstripes, and he was rewarded for it. He was the unanimous Cy Young winner, he swept through all of the Sporting News awards, and he was also famously a great person. He won the Roberto Clemente Award in 1984 for his work involving Special Olympics. Also, 5 consecutive Gold Gloves in the 1980s is not nothing. He spent all 14 of his seasons in New York, and in 2003 he had his number 49 retired, along with a plaque in Monument Park. Louisiana Lightning deserves his flowers. Mike Caldwell, Mike Flanagan, and Mike Willis are known as the 3 lefties named Mike who'd managed to defeat Ron Guidry. But I hope you can see now that there was a much larger narrative at play. It was Ron Guidry versus the Mikes.